Hi, I'm Adam and welcome once again to South Wales Ghost Watch. And on this week's show we're going to be discussing gateways and portals between worlds. And on my show again I've got Martin and Lee with me. Now I'll start off with Lee. What can you tell me about parallel worlds or multiverse worlds?
Well, I mean, certainly modern laws of physics seem to show, you know, there's a strong case to be made. There are other dimensions, and you know that ties in with the idea of parallel worlds existing. I mean, parallel worlds is a big topic. I mean, another aspect of the parallel worlds subject is that there are like gateways or portals into these other worlds. That these portals exist here and can be created. You know, they could be circular constructions that somehow enable people to move into another dimension or parallel worlds. Or you know, there are fairy traditions where in Penard in Gower there's supposed to be a portal, a gateway to the fairy kingdom. Okay. And in literature, for instance, C.S. Lewis, Narnia tales are all about basically a gateway or portal. Yeah, I mean that is it, you know. And it was also made famous in the film Stargate, you know. So parallel worlds, portals to other worlds, and modern physics, you know, they're all sort of interlinked. I mean, there is some basis for parallel worlds existing. And it's covered in stuff like the Twilight Zone as well, isn't it? And,
it is.
Things like Star Trek.
Star Trek and various things like that. There's also the idea that we're beginning to find the evidence of multiple worlds, that there are multiple worlds, that there's a multiverse. Is beginning to pull on one another. And the idea, even things like black holes are perceived in terms of that. There was a very famous idea during the 50s that there are multiple worlds. There are alternative worlds. And it may be that sometimes hauntings occur in that sort of way.
I mean, just a couple of examples. Interesting. I mean, I think in Revelations, at one point it talks about there being parallel worlds.
Yes.
And what takes place in these parallel worlds. Also, it's argued that phenomena like the Bermuda Triangle, where you have, you know, over the centuries there have been vast numbers of, you know, planes and ships and human beings have just disappeared. Okay, they disappeared. I mean, there's been no trace of them. They've clearly disappeared. And one theory is, you know, that they are, they are being sucked into or disappearing into a parallel world somehow. And you know, one interesting thing about this phenomena is that where in parts of the world where these occurrences are said to take place, there are certain things like strange electromagnetic phenomena, compasses go awry and things like that. So you know, there's quite a long tradition of you know, belief or in the existence of parallel worlds or portals, you know, both in history and in fiction.
I mean, do you believe that there is a portal to another world? Do you believe that there's a spirit realm or something like that out there?
I don't know. I mean, you know, you have to use your critical faculty with all these things, with anything else, and not just believe everything that people say. You know, study the historical records. I mean, obviously there's some folk culture going on here, which is probably just myth and folk culture, I suspect, you know. I don't think there's a gateway to another world in Penard, you know.
No.
I haven't found it if there is, but, you know, maybe there is. But saying that, I mean, obviously, going back to the Bermuda Triangle, strange things have happened there. I mean, there have been, you know, huge ocean liners weighing tens of thousands of tons, you know. There's the famous case, the Cyclops, which disappeared, weighed about 400,000 tons. You know, when that disappeared. You know, also the example of, you know, Flight 19 and a number of planes all disappearing together. Those are well-known examples.
I know Martin mentioned on a previous show that accidents that occur on planes, there tends to be less people on that. You mentioned that.
That's right. Well. Yes, there are indications of that. And I remember, I can't remember. There's no that. If you think of film, I can think of a couple of films like this, 12 Monkeys.
12 Monkeys.
Do you know that film? About time repeating itself.
Yes.
And and I think they get people if that's the film where they actually rescue people off aeroplanes that crash. It's that the people appear to die in one world, but are actually moving into another. You know, so it's quite a healthy possibility.
But I mean, it does raise the question, for instance, with the Bermuda Triangle and other strange disappearances. I mean, obviously, in most modern societies, many people disappear for whatever reasons. You know, want to disappear. Some literally do appear to walk off the face of the earth. You know, and we don't know where they go to. So that may be tied into your question. Something else worth considering is, you know, have there been attempts to manufacture these portals? Well, there's this thing, and people aren't always sure of it, called the Philadelphia experiments, where the American, and this was 60 years ago, I'm sure technology is much more advanced now, but where the American military wanted to make ships become invisible, basically, and they were messing about with electromagnetism and all kinds of things, and basically the ship is... and there were two experiments conducted. Most people don't know that, they think it's just one. They're actually a couple, and in the first one the ship was surrounded by a greenish fog and seemed to disappear, and disappeared from radar as well. And then when it reappeared sometime after, not long after, the people who've been on the ship, the SS Eldridge, claimed they'd been on there a long time, and some are supposed to have lost their minds, some are supposed to have been fused into the metal in the ship. And then it was a few months later, another experiment was conducted, the same ship again, and it's supposed to when it disappeared from sight and from radar, it's supposed to reappear hundreds of miles away in Virginia. So perhaps, you know, people, you know, we've ourselves tried to, you know, create these portals in some way.
Yes.
You know, it's certainly linked to wormholes as well.
Yes.
One argument in favour of, you know, the existence of extraterrestrials and how they reach us over the vast expanse of the universe is that they do it through wormholes. You know, wormholes do exist. You know, we're not sure. You know, I don't think we're sure how to manipulate them yet.
Yeah, I mean, a wormhole, I understand, is a tunnel with two ends, each in separate points in space and time.
That's right.
Have they ever been observed?
Well, they exist according to, you know, theories, you know, laws of physics. I mean, I think they've been established that they're there. You know, but I don't know. We haven't found any yet. But if there were more advanced civilization, say a million years more advanced than us, it's quite possible they might have discovered how to manipulate them, so they could move from one end of the universe to another in an instant, or possibly from one time to another in an instant.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of Einstein's idea that space and time are a continua. So if I borrow Lee's, so if you assume that space and time continue, like that, if I want to get from one time to that, I can fold space and time. So that might be a way in which explanations occur of travel. And I think Lee's point about travel, that fits in perfectly well. We're still guessing on the real physics of how the world works.
Yes.
And this sort of idea of gates may well fit into that perfectly.
Okay. I mean, what is Platonism? I'll ask this one too.
Platonism.
Subject.
Well, Platonism, that's an interesting idea. The philosopher Plato believed that the world was made by what he called the demiurge. The demiurge was a creator, was a god who made things, forms out of the structure of the world, and that in this world there were things called receptacles. Receptacles were models of how things should be. And also within that there were patterns. So the idea of the perfect chair existed in a sort of a central location, and that what we were trying to do was understand how the world worked. Plato believed in the model of the cave. He said we perceived reality. We were like a group of people sitting in a cave, lighting a fire, and we perceived what reality was by the shadows that were on the walls. What we actually had to do was step outside of the cave to understand the reality. So Plato's idea was that the world could operate in different sorts of ways, that we were yet to see how it really was, and that we lived life after life, yeah,
okay,
and that we travelled from life after life. So, you know, and before Plato there was Pythagoras, who talked about the transmission of souls, possibilities of other explanations.
Okay, so how do you think films perceive portals and gateways to worlds? Things like Donnie Darko, The Outer Limits, The Twilight Zone.
Well, Donnie Darko is a very interesting film. It
Yeah.
talks about possibilities of time.
I know we
Have
mentioned
you
it
ever
in
seen
the
the film
show.
Donnie
I
Darko?
haven't actually seen it, Martin.
It's a
one of the
very
few films I
fine
haven't
film.
seen.
It's fantastic
And
film.
it's about how we perceive time and how we follow. Donnie Darko, an angel falls off a plane and crushes his home. Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
yeah. So it changes. There's a crucial point where time is fixed. Darko then goes on for the next 10 days, 10, 15 days.
And he's told the world's going to end.
And he's told the world's going to
He's
end.
told the world's
But
going
he
to end.
realises that the reason the world's going to end is because he is now an anomaly in that world and cannot be in it. In those 15 days he finds love, he finds all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So he has to choose to go to another position.
Yes, and he goes back in time, doesn't he?
And he
He
goes
goes to a
back-
portal.
He goes to a portal effectively.
Yes.
But at the end he chooses to die and time resets.
Yes.
And all the things that
That's
happened never happened. It's a film. I've got a copy of it now. I'll lend you the.
I would like to see. I mean, in popular culture, in film and TV, you know, it has been quite widely and often depicted. I mean, there's a well-known British situation comedy, Good Night Sweetheart, where it's a portal.
Yes.
And basically, he finds this gateway to the past. You know, outside his garage in his shop, and you know, that's people know about that example. Obviously, you have the film Contact.
Yes.
Jodie Foster, which is very interesting, written by Carl Sagan. You know, there's a lot of interesting things to say on this whole subject. You know, a respected scientist. You know, was someone who passionately wanted to believe in extraterrestrial life. Bit of a skeptic, but it was based on on a book of his. There was a series called Time Tunnel, which was
I remember that from the 60s.
Yeah.
That's before my time.
Yeah, it was basically again, but it was this spiral. And it's interesting. One thing about the spiral is very important.
Yeah.
To this subject, and what's interesting about ancient civilizations is they often would draw spirals.
Yes.
The Celts were obsessed with spirals.
Yes, yeah.
You know, Aborigine, the Australian Aborigines, lots of cultures around the world, you know, and in a lot of our modern day depictions of these portals or gateways, we often use the spiral.
Fantasy films were influenced by them, and TV programs were influenced by
them.
They were.
Well. So this program, made in the 1960s in America, was quite popular. They'd enter a spiral and they go back to another time, you know, and there is an overlap between you know, these portals or gateways and time travel, because one argument is put forward by quite respected scientific figures is sometimes there's like a gap opens in what they call the space-time continuum, just temporarily, so that momentarily people can seem to slip into another time, even another world. And that's why we have these many accounts over the years of people appearing or seeming as if they go back to it could be the same place but in another time, and then it doesn't last for very long, you know, but that's one of the arguments put forward. So many of these portals could be, there's some said to be permanent, supposedly at Rosslyn Chapel, and I think somewhere in France, even Stonehenge, and there's some said to be temporary, and you know, where there's a rip in time, and people slip through.
So how does a black hole work? Does that suck time in, or something?
Black holes are essentially suck time in. I always think of the idea of quantum leap. The traditional wonderful thing. Guys, I'm really sorry, I have to go, but I'm sure I will. Yeah, but I reckon, you know, quantum leap is an interesting thing. So what I'll do is I'll hand you over.
Thank you, Mark.
And I said that I say in quantum leap, there's the figure who's the hologram, which is Al, who goes back and changes alternatives. It's a very humorous way to look at the possibility of gates and of changing history and reality.
Thank you, Martin.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, Martin.
Take
Come
care,
on the show.
Martin.
Take care. I'm
Good
going to go, I'm afraid, but
See you soon.
see you soon.
Okay,
Yeah.
goodbye now.
Bye.
I'll see you soon, Martin.
See you soon.
Have you seen Quantum Leap, Barry?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, yes. I have, and again, it plays on these themes. I mean, one interesting thing to consider about these is it's possible that if these portals do exist, even temporary, because of a rip in the space-time continuum, that people can't get back. So that's why some people disappear.
Yeah.
And it is known that some people do walk off the face of the earth, and people have no idea where they've got to. So that's something to bear in mind. Maybe it's a one-way thing on occasions if these portals do exist. You can't actually come back, which is interesting to bear in mind.
Okay, is there anything you'd like to add, or something which I haven't covered or mentioned?
I think we've probably covered everything.
I think we've covered everything.
Yeah, I think, and it's been very interesting. And thank you for inviting me along to discuss this.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That's all we've got time for tonight, guys. But tune in next week, where we're going to be discussing NASCAR lines. That should be quite interesting.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Have a good evening. Take care.